Alright, so hey, what's going on, guys? It's SonicSaber25, and welcome to my thoughts and analysis of Sonic Frontiers. About 2 months after the first initial footage of the game was shown, and a whole year after the first... Wait, when was the first video uploaded?
Oh no!
Ooh, okay, it's been a while. But I do have my reasons for not doing this video earlier. I sort of wanted all the news of Sonic Frontiers to get out, and I wanted to just collect my thoughts on all of it instead of making a knee-jerk reaction video where I'm very impulsive and I don't have a proper opinion of the game yet. So, while I did take a while, I do think that what I feel about the game now is the product of logic and proper analysis instead of emotion. Now, since my last Sonic Frontiers analysis video, where I was basically going over a bunch of 4chan leaks, a lot has been announced, including IGN videos, the Summer Games Fest demo, the story trailer by the official channel, the Gamescom demo, and a bunch of miscellaneous info like stuff we see on the Steam pages, and a few forum posts here and there. So I decided, instead of going over all the different sources, I'd compile each and every single source as one, and instead go over various aspects of the game, and that way I can keep in line with the most recent info and compare it to what it first looked like as well. So I'll go ahead and start off with the positives. The open world, also known as the open zone in Sonic Frontiers, was first revealed in the IGN video, and let me tell you, this IGN video did not do the open zone justice at all. When IGN first posted their video, it really looked bland, it looked boring, it looked like the person who was playing the game didn't really know how to play a Sonic game, or they were trying to show off movement, but they really weren't doing it in a nice and effective way. Anyway, later gameplay clips and later gameplay showcases have shown players with much higher competency levels, so it actually looks like the game is being played instead of someone just moving a stick around in tiny increments in different directions just to show you what would happen. Now, this later footage actually convinced me that this might be my favorite part of the game. These open zones are 5 huge islands that we can run through, and I have to say I'm really impressed with how much they've managed to refine modern Sonic's movement compared to a game like Forces, and even Generations if I'm being honest. From what I've seen anyway, it looks very fluid, it looks very cohesive, Sonic doesn't look very janky in most of the movements that he makes. There are a few moments of jank, but I think that's more due to the animation compared to the actual movement itself. There's no such thing as a drift in Sonic Frontiers because Sonic has very good turning abilities, and overall, I just like how fluid he looks. I'd really need to get a hands-on experience with the game to figure it out for myself, whether Sonic's movement has been really improved, but from what I can see, there is a pretty big improvement. It also looks like the open zones have a decent amount of things to do in them, like in terms of enemies and puzzles and stuff like that. Now, my biggest gripe with Sonic fan games like Sonic Utopia was that the open world concept was pretty good. It was a really good concept, but it didn't really feel like it had the elements that would make it into a game. It felt more like a demo. Sonic Frontiers, on the other hand, seems to have all these various elements that would make me want to go through an open world. And it feels like you need to use skill to accomplish some of them. Some of them are pretty easy, I'll get into that a bit later, but it does look like, at least for a lot of enemies and bosses, you need to have a lot of skill to beat them. It's not just mashing buttons. The bosses, speaking of which, are called Titans in this game, and they're a lot more creatively inspired, I should say. Instead of your standard, 3-lane, quick step down each lane, attack a boss sort of thing that we've seen before, it really started in Sonic Unleashed, but it's been there in Colors, it's been there in Generations, it's also been there in Lost World, and very much so present in Forces, to the point where it's become kind of stale, kind of boring if I'm being honest. So it's nice that Sonic Frontiers does away with that. There is one type of boss that does have that 3-lane quick step running style of combat, but I'm glad it's not all the bosses, and I'm glad that there are variations. In fact, look at one of these bosses. Look at how cool it looks to, attack it, take its guard down, and that only takes out the shield, and then you have to attack it to do damage, which is pretty sweet. But coming back to the islands themselves, the one that we've seen is Kronos, which is the Ruins Forest type of island. It's the one that we've seen in all the different trailers. There are 4 other islands, as we know, and one of them is apparently known as Ares, which seems like they're following this whole Greek god naming sort of style, I should say. Now, I do have a few theories in regarding this sort of naming convention, and it might give an idea on what the settings of other islands could be. There could be an island called Boreas or Poseidon, which could be an ice or a water-style island. There could be an island called Hermes, which could be completely based on like the sky or the wind or things like that. There could be an island that could either be named Hades or Hephaestus. I'm thinking Hades would be a more... I don't know, it rolls off the tongue a bit better, but it would be an island where there's like a lot of magma activity, volcanic activity, things like that, you know? So these are just some of my theories that I have. I'm not too sure if this is going to be the convention that they follow throughout the game. This is just my theory. Now, the islands look great graphically, okay? There's no contesting that, in my opinion. I feel like they are very good, very crisp, very beautiful. However, looking at it artistically, some people have a few issues with it being a bit generic. Now, this is very understandable, especially Kronos. It looks a lot like your standard environment. It doesn't feel very Sonic-y, it doesn't have that feel to it, and it does seem like you could just put any other platformer character in it, and it really wouldn't change the look or the feel of the game. That character wouldn't feel out of place. Meanwhile, Sonic just looks like he's running through this general island. I personally don't really have a problem with this, mainly because I just love the way the island looks. I don't know, maybe I'm just a sucker for these forest-style islands. I'm really gonna enjoy, if there's a beach-style island, or at least a beach area in one of these islands, I'm gonna enjoy myself there, because I'm a really big sucker for beach areas or beach levels in games. It was one of my favorite parts in Breath of the Wild, too. So, if there's a beach part in this game, I'm gonna be a real big fan of it. That being said, I do have a few gripes with these open zones, and one of them is that there is quite a bit of automation, and a lot of it seems unnecessary. There's a bunch of rails, dash rings, all these general stuff. The rails seem to go on for a while, which is something I'm not a big fan of. I get it that in some areas having a bit of automation is okay, but it feels like the rails are a bit overdone. At least for me. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but to me, the rails feel like they're a bit overdone. It feels like there are a few too many dash rings here and there, but the really annoying part for me is the unnecessary amount of dash panels and springs. And I'm talking dash panels and springs over areas that you can clear with a single jump. Like, look at this one part of the game, and tell me what these dash panels and that spring even do. Give me a proper purpose for that, because I really cannot find a single use for those dash panels in this section of the game. Also, some of the puzzles do feel a bit too easy. They feel a bit generic. However, there are different speed or time-based puzzles that I've been seeing. We haven't seen the puzzles themselves, but it's indicated that these speed-based puzzles or these time-based puzzles will be in the form of those hourglasses that we've seen in some of the gameplay demos. So if that is true, I'm going to hope that those are a little bit more fun. They rely more on Sonic's speed, and hopefully they'll be more enjoyable than what we've seen so far. Now, if there's really one thing to talk about in any Sonic game, really, it's the whole topic of momentum. And for Sonic Frontiers, there does seem to be a semblance of momentum in the game. It wasn't really clear in the initial gameplay. Again, that initial gameplay was really not a good showcase of movement. But later trailers and gameplay clips have shown that there is a significant amount of momentum in the game. And the best way that I can illustrate this is looking at someone's gameplay of the Asura boss fight. The Asura Titan, I should say. While I can show you these clips and it can seem like there is a difference, I'd personally have to get a hold of the game myself and play it before I give any definitive answer. But so far right now, it does look like there is a bit of momentum in the game at least, which is nice. But for now, I'm going to move on to something in what is, in my opinion, an amazing addition to this game. And it is the ability to customize Sonic's speed, acceleration, and his full range of movement traits I mean, it's done by way of these sliders, and just look at all these traits that you can customize.
Wow.
It is incredible, and it's so good that they're giving the player this much control over Sonic, because you can really just customize him to what you feel like you want Sonic to play like. But that's enough about all of the movement and the islands themselves. I'll move on to another really good addition, at least in my opinion, to this game. Combat and skills are really nothing new to the series. Combat was an aspect of previous games like Sonic Unleashed, Sonic 06, even Sonic Heroes had a very rudimentary combat system. But Unleashed did have the most in-depth combat system. And skills have been present in the game since Sonic and the Secret Rings. And if you want to go even further back, SA1 and SA2 had items that gave you unlockable skills, if you want to count that too. So they've really been a big mainstay in the series, and the only games to omit them were Colors, Lost World, and Forces. I'm not counting Wispins as skills. I really don't want to, because they're not really related to Sonic, and they just weren't that fun in my opinion. But I'm happy that skills are coming back in Sonic Frontiers, because they work great at giving the player unlockable incentives. What I mean by that is that in Sonic Frontiers, it looks like you can unlock combat skills, and those combat skills look really cool if I'm being honest, and a few movement style skills here and there like the air trick. I'll go over the combat skills that we've seen so far, but I don't think this is the full list of combat skills. So if there are additional skills, it could be that they're either upgrades to the skills that we're seeing now, or they're brand new skills on their own. It's tough to say which at this point of time. So the first skill is the Psyloop, which everybody called, including me, the spin cycle in early trailers, because that's what the leaks called it. And if I'm being honest, I kind of like spin cycle as more of a name. I could have seen maybe tornado loop or tornado cycle as a cooler name. Psyloop is, it's okay. Basically, you have to hold down a button, Sonic starts leaving a trail behind him, you trace a loop in it, you let go of the button, and it creates a gust of wind that affects everything within the loop, and it launches enemies into the air. The Sonic Boom is that flashy rapid-fire shot style attack that Sonic performs in the combat trailer that we've seen from IGN. And it looks pretty cool if I'm being honest. The Wild Rush is the zigzag or Z-pattern style attack. The homing shot is actually one that we've seen in recent clips and trailers where Sonic launches a few blue spheres at an enemy. It's the least Sonic type of skill, or it's the skill that I would associate the least with a character like Sonic, but it's alright. The Spin Slash, and fun fact, when I first saw this, I actually thought it was called the Spin Dash, and I was actually really amazed that they put the Spin Dash in the game. But anyway, the Spin Slash is this buzzsaw-like attack, and it looks pretty cool if I'm being honest, and the way it sounds is also really, really good. Here, have a listen. The Loop Kick is that one move that I really thought was super cool. I know I'm saying that for a lot of these moves, but I mean it this time. I really thought that the Loop Kick was really nice and cinematic when I first saw it, and it doesn't have an impact that equates to the huge wind-up, but it still looks really good. The Stomp attack is pretty generic. It's a stomp that you can do in the middle of a combo, and I don't know, you stomp down on the enemy, that's all there is to it really. The Quick Psyloop skill is basically what the name suggests. Sonic forms a quick loop around the enemy, launches them in the air with the Psyloop style ability. It actually really reminds me of the Blue Tornado skill from Sonic Heroes, the one that the Speed character could do if you press the jump button and the attack button in midair, which launches an enemy off their feet. Now, there are a few skills that we actually haven't seen, the first one being the Phantom Rush, where basically Sonic attacks with a bunch of after image, or they could be energy clones, I think. I'm not really sure, again, I really want to see it in trailers, and I think that would be really cool to look at, but we haven't seen it yet, or at least I don't think we've seen it yet. And the other one that we haven't seen is the Recovery Smash, which lets Sonic slam into an enemy again when he gets knocked back. You get a QTE, and if you do the QTE correctly, Sonic recovers fast and slams into the enemy with a counter shot, basically. There's also this auto combo skill, which basically automatically lets Sonic use the battle skills that have been unlocked in the skill tree. The only thing is that there's a cost of the reduced damage. Besides all the offensive skills and all the attacking skills that Sonic has in his skill tree, Sonic can also dodge by using the left or the right bumper, which is basically the quick step style dodge, but he can also parry attacks. If you press the left and right bumper at the same time before an enemy hits you, you can parry the attack away. I don't know if this does any damage to the enemy or if it stuns the enemy or whatever. I haven't seen enough footage to determine that, but it looks pretty cool. It's a parry. Outside of combat, Sonic also has the drop dash ability, which you do by holding the A button as per Xbox controls. It's basically Mania's drop dash, but they added it in Frontiers, and I think that's pretty cool because that really helps maintain momentum. A part of the parkour system from Lost World does seem to return as well, because apparently if you hold right trigger and go near a wall, you can actually run up it. I'm not sure if you can run along a wall, like along the horizontal length of it, but you can climb it vertically, and that's pretty neat. Now, let's move on to the next aspect of the game. To me, collectibles in games are a huge part in terms of my incentive to play and replay the game or parts of it. Forces really didn't have that huge incentive for collecting things. You could get the red rings, and then you replay the level to get bingo numbers, and then you replay the level to get these moon medal style things. But in the end, all they ended up leading to was more and more customizable stuff for the avatar. And after a while, I just wasn't interested in getting more stuff. But Frontiers has a more RPG style when it comes to collectibles, and I'm definitely not complaining about that because I really enjoy that RPG style of collecting stuff that actually benefits you instead of being a cosmetic change. In Frontiers, like any other Sonic game, you have rings, which function, usually in other Sonic games, they function as a health bar, but in this game, they might actually be different, and I'll get into more why later when I cover the other collectibles. But for now, it seems like rings, you can lose them when you get hit, but it doesn't seem to be completely linked to your health. You get skill points, which allow you to unlock skills in the skill tree. There's really nothing more to it than that. You have these red and blue items that were present in the early gameplay trailers, but it was recently in the promo image for the pre-order where we learned their names. They were called Red Seeds of Power and Blue Seeds of Defense. I'm gonna take a guess and say that the use is pretty straightforward. Basically, the Red Seeds of Power upgrading Sonic's attack power and the Blue Seeds of Power upgrading Sonic's defense when you collect enough of each. Then you have the Cocos. I'm not even going to try to pretend otherwise. These guys are Korok Seeds. That's it. That's all there is to them. You have to give them to an Elder Coco or Hermit Coco, and the Elder can increase Sonic's health, speed, the max ring count, and attack power. Now, this attack power, again, makes me question what the Red Seeds of Power are being used for, because if the Elder Coco increases attack power, what's the point of the Red Seeds of Power? It's a bit of a question mark. You can also get these character memory tokens for each specific character, like Amy, Knuckles, and Tails. I don't know if there will be more characters in the other islands, because we only have 3 characters, but there are 5 islands. And I'm gonna guess that each island has its own specific character memory tokens. These are all my assumptions, I'm not really sure. But you do need them to rescue the specific character. There are also red star rings in the game, but they're not really a part of the open zone, so I'm gonna cover them in depth as a part of this next aspect of the game that I really need to talk about. So there are 2 items that I didn't really cover in the previous section, and I said I'd elaborate on the red rings in the previous section as well. These 2 items are the portal gears and the vault keys, and I didn't cover them because I feel it's better to talk about them here more in detail since they're essential to this part of the game called Cyberspace. Portal gears are obtained from defeating the Titan bosses, those huge things that we've seen across the islands, and they're used to get into cyberspace. The cyberspace levels are basically your run-of-the-mill, familiar, modern Sonic Boost-style levels. And we need to talk about those. So, if you've been checking recent news on Sonic Frontiers, you know that the levels, at least the levels that we've seen in cyberspace, have level themes that we have seen before in Sonic Generations, like Green Hill and Sky Sanctuary and Chemical Plant. What's a little more concerning is that there are videos showing that the level design or parts of the level design have been copied or at least remade from previous levels of previous games, like a level of Cyberspace Green Hill being a copy of Windmill Isle's level design, another copy of Cyberspace Green Hill in Sonic Frontiers being from Generations, Sonic Generations is Green Hill, and Cyberspace Chemical Plant, the one we've seen anyway, copying Chemical Plant again from Sonic Generations. Now, as someone who's collectively put over 150 hours since Sonic Generations from release date, I can definitely confirm that the resemblance between these two levels, that is the Cyberspace and the levels that they are supposedly copying, the resemblance is very uncanny. However, I should also mention, before I get bombarded by people, again, if people care enough about bombarding the comments, I should mention that these levels are meant to be based on Sonic's memories. This is not confirmed, I'm not too sure. I haven't seen an official statement on it. I can kind of understand it based on that story logic, and I do hope that it's well explained in the story, but I will say this to anybody who's criticizing the levels. You are 100% valid in calling these levels lazy and unoriginal despite what anyone else says. It doesn't matter that it's only 3 levels out of the, again, rumored 35. It doesn't matter that it's so few. You're right to expect better from a game that you're paying full price for. I think a lot of people are getting sick of Green Hill Chemical Plant, and now Sky Sanctuary again being reused. It just doesn't feel right to me that they are doing this again. That being said, despite all the complaining that I've done about all the Cyberspace levels, I'm really not that bothered by this. I think though that this might be a very personal thing to me. I'm just apathetic to Sonic Team's recycling practices now in terms of levels. But if I have to give a silver lining to any of this, or at least a facsimile of a silver lining, it's that the level design of Generations is at least better than if they reuse Forces levels, I guess? Now, there are more Cyberspace levels that haven't been revealed, and I am very much trying to remain optimistic for those. I guess you could say that's me. I don't know if it's really copium, because I've admitted that these levels aren't bad, so I'm not really coping for anything. Well, I can't say that the levels are bad, I just think that they're reused and unoriginal. So either way, I'm not really coping for anything. I'm hoping? Is it hopium? Can we make that a new term? I'm doing a line of hopium, because I really do hope that these new levels are going to be good, or at least the ones that we haven't seen are going to be good. Besides the levels themselves, I'll get into the objectives and why we're entering cyberspace. Basically, each cyberspace has a set of objectives, and every time you complete an objective, you get a vault key. Now, these objectives, I mean, just look at them. They are ridiculously easy. The toughest objective, again, in this would be collecting the 5 red star rings, which I said I'd talk about. But, I mean, if you've played a Sonic game before, you know what it is. It's a standard collect 5 red star ring, but instead of, giving you something a bit more significant, it gives you a vault key. These vault keys are used to unlock Chaos Emeralds. And I'm assuming that since there are tons of cyberspace stages, every single time you unlock all 7 emeralds, they scatter again when you go to the next island. So, to cap it off, I guess I'd like to talk about a lot of the comments and the controversy I've been seeing in the fanbase. And I've always felt this ever since Frontiers news started first coming out, but I feel like we shouldn't dismiss others' opinions. It's something that we should really try to avoid in general. You can disagree with someone else's opinion, but it really doesn't help if you shut everybody out. If we shut everybody out and just talk in our own little echo chambers and keep echoing positive or negative sentiments about our respective games or any part of the franchise, really. I think that anyone who talks positively about the game, not everybody anyway, not everyone who's talking about the game are huffing copium, they're not really, seething, they're not being, I don't really want to say it, but they're not sucking off Sega just because they enjoy parts of the game, because there are parts of the game that are enjoyable, they are pretty good. The same way, people who criticize elements of the game aren't being overly negative, they aren't being nitpicky, and I don't like using this word, but they aren't being bitchy towards the game, because there are plenty of things that can be improved on in the game. In the end, I think what we need to realize is that both the sides of criticism and the side of positivity both want Sonic to be great, and they want not just this game, but the franchise as a whole to have that respect that Sonic used to have in the 90s. And success to me involves refining and compounding on the things that are positive about either the game or the franchise, while recognizing and amending any of the drawbacks. I really hope that I can see a point when Sonic can do both properly. But that's all I really have to say about this entire thing. I think the next time I make a video on this is probably when the game is gonna release. If you want to see me cover this game, I might be doing it a bit later. I can't do it in November because I'll be busy with a bunch of stuff, but I'll definitely be doing it a little bit later. So if you want to see that, by all means, please go ahead and subscribe. And also, you can check out the Sonic Colors LP that I've been doing. I'll leave a link for it in the iCard. And if you want to see any more of content like this, tell me in the comments. I'd really be interested to hear your opinion. And yeah, I think that's about it. So I'll be seeing you either in a Sonic Colors video or the next time I cover Sonic Frontiers, whichever it be. Till then, thanks for watching. Seriously, thanks.